So, good morning and welcome everybody to the Bluffers Guide to APIs. My name is Pete Roberts and I'm the EMEA Sales Director for eBiotech. I've been with eBiotech 7 years, most of them selling API platforms in different parts of the world. As you can see, we have 3 companies presenting to you today. We have eBiotech, Willis Towers Watson and Entrust. Because there are a few companies, let me just warn you that there will be a switch over between each one because they're actually going to be doing live demos and it makes it easier from a Zoom point of view. So if there's a mini pause, please don't think that the webinar is over. We're just transitioning. So this is the lineup of your speakers for today and they will introduce themselves as we go along. A few housekeeping points just to make things a little bit easier. Everybody's going to be on mute to keep the noise down, but you can still chat to us via the chat button at the bottom of the screen, which means that you can ask questions. There's also the feedback forms, if I could ask you to complete those. And just so that you know, we are recording the entire presentation. So this will then appear on the MGA website. One last housekeeping point, we have some students from doing CPD. This session qualifies for that, so they'll be accredited with a number of points, providing we hit these objectives. It's protocol that we show this slide at the beginning and the end of a presentation to make sure that these delegates get their points. So let's get into it. Here's the agenda for today. We have a lot to get through. As it says on the website, the idea behind a Bluffers Guide to APIs is to share and ensure an insider view of the real value of APIs in a digestible format. This is a very business-focused approach, but there is a tech flavor where relevant. It's the full agenda which breaks down into 2 main parts. In the first 10 minutes, we are sharing some anecdotal tips, which we hope you find useful. And then this leads into the second part, which is 3 short demos from 3 different companies, illustrating what those tips look like in the real world with real systems. So let's start. Why API? As the economist says in this slide, data is the new oil. And if that's the case, that makes APIs one of the most significant developments of the 21st century. And that's why we hope this is an interesting talk for you. Why? Because the data is no use to anybody unless it's connected to other systems. That's what APIs do. They connect systems together. APIs are the digital building blocks of the API economy. And in the insurance sector, we're still figuring out how to use these for best effect. But there's a problem. There are some misconceptions about APIs, that they're purely technical, that they're just for technical people, and so on. So there's a huge opportunity, there's a lot to play for, but there are a few obstacles to overcome. We hope that the following presentation helps you as a business person see APIs in a different light. So first of all, getting the starting point right. Normally with this type of talks, it starts off with a technical definition of what an API is. We're not doing that today. Getting the starting point right for us is absolutely key. It's not all about IT technical. We borrowed here from Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why. What we mean by this is typically the process of thinking about something new like APIs is we start with talking about what an API is, the definition, then there's a technical explanation, and then finally what can an API do, and it gets increasingly technical. At this point, most business people almost lose the will to live. So we've turned that round. Today, we're starting with the why. Having got the starting point right, the next thing we recommend you to look out for is what we call the innovation trap. We didn't discover it. This was so-called by Edward de Bono. And the concept behind it is that whenever there is a new technology, the crowd rush after it. They're not sure exactly how it's going to benefit the business, but they chase it. And because they're all in a group, they tend to miss the unique opportunities that are available to them. The diagram says it all, really. But so for one example might be because APIs are so closely associated with cloud technology, which is a PAYG finance model, often a lot of people think that the main benefit is just purely financial and cutting costs. Of course, there is that advantage. But to to just look at that alone would miss the massive opportunity of how APIs can be chained together to support new business ideas and for the business to be involved in that process. Calibrating your perspective. What do we mean by this? What we mean is that a business person is not a spectator in this process. There's lots of misconceptions, as I said earlier, about APIs, that they're too technical, etc., etc. They're listed here. I'm not going to read them all out. But the one we particularly disagree with is that an API strategy is for IT departments only. The quote we love, because this sums it up. Of course, it's about IT, but it's also about the business and common sense. APIs are about business know-how meets common sense meets technical know-how. Now, what I'd like to do to illustrate this very quickly is show you a light bulb moment from our history in 2014. Now, on November the 11th, 2014, Alibaba hosted the largest internet shopping day in the history of the entire world. Zongan was the insurance company, and eBaotech supplied the policy administration behind it. Now, in that 24-hour period, there were over 80 million policies written. So, sounds good, right? But it revealed something that nobody had thought about previously. In those days, enterprise insurance systems were made of huge blocks of millions of lines of code. And here was Alibaba only using about 5% of them to perform a very simple task over and over again. The moral of the story is that it was clear in future companies would want systems that weren't simply huge blocks of code, that had much more granular capabilities, and they just wanted to buy the capabilities that they wanted. You probably guessed it, APIs is a solution to that problem. Now, so we ended up re-engineering our multi-million lines of code policy administration system into APIs so it could be much more granular. And this took a couple of years. And when we went to market in 2016/17, APIs were still quite a new idea in the insurance space. Hopefully you can follow the logic behind this slide. We don't use it these days, but when it was introducing a brand new concept, it worked well. So on the left, you've got lumpy bumpy chocolate representing the old style policy administration systems that then became morphed into the more modular type policy administration systems, and finally to become the chocolate ball type administration system where an insurer could just pick and choose the individual capabilities that it needed, because the individual capabilities were now individual APIs, not a big lump of code that you couldn't access. That's an example of why arriving at the solution of using APIs to fix a problem, the Alibaba problem in this case, it wasn't just about IT know-how. That came later, of course, incredibly important, but the main input came from business and common sense. So this is what we wanted to pass on to you today. We're going to go through a couple of visual analogies. Very briefly, you can't escape a presentation about APIs without any definition whatsoever, but it's mercifully short. An API allows two systems to easily talk to each other to support a business process. This should be for the purpose of generating more profit and/or cutting costs, because it's a business proposition. It's not just a piece of technology. The other points on the slide, the business people in the audience completely ignore. For those doing CBD, please take them on board. So what is an API and how does it work? Obviously, we're talking from a business point of view, from a layman's point of view. This is not remotely technical. It looks simple, but I promise you it's going to help you hopefully understand a more complex scenario later, which you can take away and perhaps apply to your own situation. So the first one is imagine that you're in a restaurant. In this scenario, you are system A. The kitchen is system B, and the waiter is like the API. So you can call the waiter over and you can ask for data. Data being the menu, food types, gluten allergies, how do I pay, etc., etc. And then the waiter goes off with your data requests, brings it back, and you're done. Very straightforward, and that's the way it's meant to be. That is all an API does. But there's one trick an API has up its sleeve, which is particularly interesting if you're a business person. It shields you from the complexities of what's happening in the kitchen. In other words, it shields you from the complexity of the other system that the API is connecting you to. He's from a restaurant that I go to quite normally. So, how do you build an API strategy? The first, you need 2 steps. The first one is you need a good business idea. So there's business people in the audience know that means making money or saving money. The idea is not an IT technical idea, it needs to be business. So it's going to fall into one of these 3 categories, right? More of your existing business is going to help you cut costs of getting that type of business, or you're going to go after a new type of business altogether. Once you've got that great business idea under your belt, you need to evaluate whether your existing system can support it or not. With APIs bringing lots of new opportunities, perhaps it can't. So you think, right, I've got this new idea. Here's my legacy system back at MGA HQ. And your idea might need another technology because your current system can't support it. And you can choose from whoever you want for this purpose. But then there's a big hurdle. You then have to talk IT into accepting a new implementation that's going to hit your existing technology stack, the legacy system, to support your new business idea. Now, this puts you in this situation. Obviously, these are not real IT people, even though IT people I notice are getting younger and younger these days. This is to represent the problem of IT governance. The IT people are doing absolutely the right thing. They can't just let you add any new system that you see and like because it's going to support your new and brilliant API idea for doing business. Because if they just add it to the existing system, it could cause it to become unstable. That's why these rules exist. As a business person, they're very hard to understand and follow. And at this stage, many ideas fail. So that's your first API strategy to support your great new business idea. But fortunately, there is a second one. So, similar setup as before. Here's your legacy system, here's you. And this time, let's suppose you have a great business idea, and to support it, you need the rating optimization engine from Willis Towers Watson and the lease abstraction capabilities of Interest. For whatever reason, this is just a scenario to help you understand the whole process. Now, this time, instead of going to IT and saying, I need to hit the existing technology stack, and they go, oh no, that's going to cause big problems with our legacy system, it's going to make it unstable. We just make a simple connection between an all-in-one API-enabled insurance platform with the plug board here in this picture, and then just click in Willis Towers Watson and Interest because they are API-enabled. Hence the plug analogy. So the circuit is now complete and you can implement your new business idea. Now compare and contrast this with the previous strategy. But that's not all. This is sitting in the cloud, which means it's at a safe distance from your existing system, from your legacy system. That keeps IT happy. That means it's easy for you to implement new ideas. And of course, once you've implemented once, you've got spare slots. So you can add in virtually any other technology that you need to via API to support new business ideas as you think of them going forward. And they don't all have to be technology APIs. This one, for instance, could be an API that connects to a new distribution partner. This one could be an API that connects to a new affinity, and so on. And there's one final point to make about this strategy. You also get, within the plug board, a hidden trick. It comes preloaded with hundreds of APIs, all insurance related, which means you can configure product, quote product, bind, issue, configure digital channels, all in the one place. Why is this important? Because it means in the case that when we're talking about the Willis Towers Watson rating optimization engine, what their clever technology does is give you a rate. So the rate arrives here, but what do you do with it? well, you've got two choices. You either take it back to your existing system, or we've already decided that that's not a good idea, but you don't have to anyway, because the API that you need to process that rate, and Imran's going to show you this in a minute, and so is Richard, is already here. So you can quote, bind, issue all from the plug board, and then add the technologies later. So here's the pros and cons of the two API strategies. Just remember, it needs to start always with a great business idea. It shouldn't be an IT discussion. And to keep time, I'm going to move on now. So we're going to go into 3 different demos. And so you know what to expect. We'll just show you here. And we're showing you these and ask you to bear in mind, this could be any technology we're showing you for any purpose. How you need to think of a technology that applies to your business idea. What we're trying to show you is APIs are relatively simple. APIs can be chained together to do amazingly complex things, but really from a simple point of view. So without any further ado, Imran's going to show you eBauTech's all-in-one insurance platform, which is fully API enabled. And in this scenario, that is what Willis Towers Watson and Radar Live would plug into, and we'll show you a live demo of that. And it's also what Entrust lease abstraction OCR technology can do, and we're going to show you an example of that. So we haven't just been talking theory, we're going to show you the practice. So now I'd like to pass you over to Imran, and we'll try and make this change as quickly as possible while I stop my share.
Thanks, Pete. So one of the key strategies Pete mentioned earlier is that an insurer can use an API-enabled insurance platform, that quote-unquote plug board that we saw, to have a faster go-to-market experience. And eBauTech, we happen to have one. It's called Insurmo. But there are other solutions out there. There are more generic non-insurance solutions out there that you can find from Amazon or Microsoft. But we'll be looking at one example of this to sort of give you a flavor of what we're talking about and how these sort of API platforms can bring all of your APIs together in one place. So the first benefit of using such a platform is that it has a minimal impact on your legacy systems, right? So you can connect your existing system of record that's largely self-contained, but you can now connect to all this new capability, right? To be able to handle any new insurance or distribution scenario. And it's all in one place. So you can do anything from product configuration to channel management and support all of the common insurance lifecycle operations like quote, bind, issue, claims, FNO. So the process on Insurmo really starts from our digital insurance product library. So this is where you can go and you can find an existing insurance product, or you can start by building your own from scratch. And an insurance product in a digital sense is basically what defines the business parameters of that insurance product. You know, what kind of questions you're asking, how, what kind of data you want to capture, what kind of rules do you have in place. And so on Insurmo, you can find a catalog of all these pre-built products, or you can use one of our product design tools to go ahead and build your own product from scratch, right? And all of this process is well defined, and you have the screens and other things to be able to do this, and you just work your way down and define the business parameters. The output of this is a set of APIs that you can use as individual building blocks, right? And on the screen, we categorize them here as insurance services, all right? So within insurance services, you have all of those bits and pieces, the building blocks, the Lego pieces that you need to assemble your insurance scenario. So the fact that each of these, historically, all of these sort of come in one big monolith, like Pete mentioned, right? So you buy one big system and it does everything you want, and you either take it all or you leave it, right? But what this sort of experience allows you to do is that you can take only the bits that you actually need, which sort of reduces the time you need to implement it and also increases the flexibility of how you sort of put these things together to end up with your final insurance experience. The second benefit of using a platform like this is that you can gain access to a lot of third-party services, right? So a lot of the insurance services over here are offered by eBauTech, but as you'll see in the demos we're about to show you, that you can go to a vendor like Willis Towers Watson or Entrust and get access to their very powerful and unique systems that you can then also integrate using the same API language into your insurance experience. And in order to finish the experience, you need a lot of non-insurance services, right? Things like SMS, email, payment, two-factor authentication, encryption, decryption, document generation. All of these things you need in a modern insurance solution because customers expect it, right? If you go to buy insurance today, you expect all of this stuff to work seamlessly. So in your experience, you need to be able to include all of these as well. And so we provide these as well with the same technology and same API language for you to be able to wire it all together into one experience. And now I'll quickly show you the two demos we're going to do today. One is with Radar Live, so Richard will walk you through that, and we're using their Radar Live API, and that's basically a rating API. And everything you'll see in the demo is actually being run off of this one platform, right? So the app is running within this platform, and all of the API are being wired through the platform. And so it's all coming together in one plug board, as Pete mentioned earlier. The other API is the Remap API from Entrust. So within Shormo, you have the capability of registering to these, or if you want to use an API that we don't currently have, you can always go into our utilities and import it and register it yourself. And this includes third-party APIs or any APIs that you want to register for yourself. And I should add that we're in our list of insurance services, we're always adding more vendors, and over time we've gathered a lot of APIs, and we'll continue to do so. So if you don't find something that we offer, we will eventually be able to add it in. So just to conclude, there's three main benefits to using an API insurance platform like this. Number one is you can handle virtually any insurance proposition. It's all in one place without disrupting or being held back by legacy systems. The second benefit is that you can add virtually any InsurTech or vendor solution to enhance the platform for your own business purposes. And finally, by using a platform like this, you can literally drive your entire ecosystem from it. And really the possibilities are endless. So I think once you see the next few apps that we've put together as examples, it'll really open your mind to what you can possibly do with this. So with that, I'll pass you over to Richard from Willis Towers Watson, and he can show you their Radar Live demo that's all integrated through Insurmo.
Thank you, Imran. Good morning, everybody. I'm just going to share a screen here. So here we go. So firstly, to introduce myself, I'm Richard Clarkson. I'm the head of London Market Consulting here at Willis Towers Watson. What I want to be able to share with you this morning is how people are using APIs to connect into our software, where our software is basically a calculation engine, a decision engine that allows your business to do lots of different things. So I'm going to take you through a little bit of theory, and then I'm going to show you a practical application of that. What we're finding is that people are increasingly investing, particularly across London market, and we're seeing it in all aspects of London market, including the MGA space. And they're doing it for all sorts of reasons. And they're doing it to be able to develop new pricing structures, look at the next generation of rating models, to manage their risk appetite, to automatically select risk and automatically process quotes, process renewals, etc., etc. So therefore, they're using software like ours as a decision engine for risk selection, operational routing, pricing solutions, and so on and so forth. And this sits as part of an evolution that started back in the 1990s in personal lines. And I remember when I started my career, to rate a personal motor policy, you used a book. There were 10 different tables as a points-based system, and it was very simple arithmetic to arrive at a premium. And we've seen, haven't we, how rating is now far more complex, and we're seeing the echoes of that now happening within the commercial market, which actually has quite simple rating structures. The complexity in commercial is more around the exposures and the product, but we are now expecting and beginning to see a move towards more complex rating using the decision engines and pricing solutions that we provide. And what's really interesting to us as well is we're seeing different strategies at the MGA side as well as on the insurer side, which is driving those participants to a very similar place. So MGAs are increasingly looking for increased pricing sophistication, how they can manage their portfolio, moving to an increased adoption of net rating positions, using APIs to talk to those insurers who are also trying to talk back. And they're trying to talk back by pushing out insights and controls to use their own portfolio management analytics, and with both sides seeking to optimize and control for capital. And what we're seeing now is people increasingly seeking to compete and differentiate on some of these themes, and some of these themes Peter already talked about earlier on, but competing on speed, competing on the granularity of the portfolio, and competing on costs. And what we're expecting to see is in these dark blue boxes, these are now how MGAs in particular are beginning to create functionality for themselves in terms of dynamically managing risk appetite, being able to make their own assessments for price adequacy and reserve adequacy across the market, looking for capital intensity, accumulation, and so on and so forth, and surfacing that as part of your portfolio controls, because MGAs are increasingly seeking to identify how can I be more sophisticated than my competitors so that I can offer a better offer to capacity as to why I should get that capacity cheaper than anybody else and find my competitive space. So with that theory in mind, what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to show you a practical application. I'm going to use personal motor here because it's just easy, but bearing in mind that we can use this for any other classes of insurance and the commercial classes as well. It's going to show you, so let's just get a quote, and we're just going to upload a VIN card, which is nice and straightforward, and you can see it's found all the details. I click on next, and it's pulled through all the information that you would need. This is all information that will then input into our rating model. So I'm just going to put in the price as one piece. Now I'm just going to find the driver details. So I'm going to upload these, and here they go, and they've been found, and I click on next. And all those driver details have come through. There's a few things extra I've just got to put in, so just bear with me a second whilst I do this. And importantly is the postcode, which we often use. I just click on next, and now this is now talking to our rating engine, and in a moment we'll bring back a premium of, here you go, £771.95, and that's a way in which all that information I just collected has been put through to our calculation engine, our decision engine, and returned an outcome. So that's my bit. I'm now going to hand over to Martin. I'm just going to stop sharing, Martin, so that you can see. I hope you've got control.
Thank you. Bear with me 1 second. I'm struggling to share. All right, can you all see my? So hopefully that's. Sorry, my apologies. Well, good morning, everyone. Let me introduce myself. My name is Martin Betts. I'm the Vice President for EMEA for Entrust. My background is over 20 years in real estate technology. Sorry. So I'm here to talk about lease abstraction and artificial intelligence lease abstraction. So many of you may not know what we mean by lease abstraction. So I've just put a statement on screen that explains it. While it's quite a complex thing to actually do, it's very simple in what it's trying to achieve. So effectively, it's an automated process of reading a lease, but a lease has multiple documents. It's not just the original lease. It could have numerous amendments which have to be read through, and then delivering that information, that data, back to the business user in a complete data set, but also importantly, an accurate data set. So how do we do that? So our system for lease abstraction is called Remap. So the first thing we do is we take all your source data. So these will be, as mentioned, your lease agreements and all the associated amendments, but it could be numerous other documents and data sources. So it could be a valuation statement, it could be an asset register, it could be an Excel spreadsheet, it could be data from a data warehouse. It doesn't matter, we don't really care. We will just take the data that you provide. So what do we then do with that data? So the first thing we do is review all the documents that you sent us. And that's where the artificial intelligence will start coming, because it will review the information, it will find out if there's any pages missing, are all the documents that were sent to us correct and associated to the right lease. So once we have that, we then start abstracting the data. So what we often find is there's far more data in these documents than people originally requested. So we look to enhance that data to deliver back to you, the business user, because the more information you can take out of those documents and those files, it means the further risk analysis you have available at your fingertips. So once we actually take this data, we're then going to send that via an API to your given system. So in this example, I'm going to be showing soon, we're going to go back to eBay Tech, but as Peter has mentioned before, it doesn't have to go to one particular system. APIs can go anywhere. So if you do want it to go to a valuation system, a property system, an accounting system, another data warehouse, then by all means, use the APIs to do that. So I'm just going to give you an example and a short demonstration how we've utilized the data from leases through Remap to put that into eBay. So I'm now into eBay, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to say, I want to load all the information directly from Remap into eBay Tech. Now from here, I'm confirming the details are correct. I'm just going to move the cameras. So for the next part, I'm saying, okay, what information do I want to quote on? Now, if I'm quoting on a shopping centre, for example, I may have 200 leases that would need bringing through. Now, typing in 200 leases, that's quite a painstaking task. It could also be that I'm quoting on a portfolio of properties. That could be 10, 20, 15 properties under one portfolio. And again, that is a huge amount of work for the individual to do. So all we're doing is the data has come through, so we've got two systems working together. I want to say I want this property. I may want to put other restrictions on that, other data points. I also want this property brought through. And then once I've done that, I can say, okay, I want the quote. So it will then go, all the information then goes through the calculation engine to then provide me on my left-hand side here, the quotation for those numerous data points, those numerous properties for that commercial insurance. So it's just a quick and easy way of actually utilizing that data to gather further risk analysis. Something Richard mentioned, where what he's seeing is the increased demand for price and sophistication. The more data you can give it, the more risk analysis it has, that hopefully meets that objective. So I'm just going to finish with this. At the start of the presentation, Peter mentioned about how important data is. Now, we all use data to make business decisions. But if we can have a complete data set, and importantly, a correct data set, we are going to make better decisions. We're going to have better pricing moving forward. And the only way we can achieve this is by sharing that data. And how we share data is through the APIs. So hopefully that's where everyone can gain benefit, not just tech companies, not just individuals, but everyone utilizing the power of the API. I'm going to pass you back to Peter, and thank you for listening. Peter. I'll stop sharing.
Thank you, Martin. Okay, so apologies for that pause there. Thank you very much to Imran, Richard and Martin for those presentations. We've shown you a lot. We've thrown a lot at you today. Just to recap, the idea was to show you that you can do many things with APIs and you can mix and match them. And the experience that you have, you probably didn't notice, barely noticed when Richard was doing his presentation or Martin was doing his, how the transition between their technologies and the actual insurance quote processing, because that was done via an API. But in fact, there were two separate systems. There was the Willis Towers Watson and eBowTech. It was Entrust and eBowTech. So this is an important point. It's what we call seamless utility. And when you think about it, that's quite a handy capability to have if you're ever implementing a new business idea in your organization, because the end user barely experiences any change in their system. It's seamless. So we're just going to recap. Sorry, we're just going to sum up the main Bluffers Guide takeaways now. There's only 3 of them. Then we'll go into questions and answers. So the first point I wanted to make was this is just a huge opportunity. And it's a huge opportunity for 2 reasons. One, as the economy says, data is the new oil, but data is no good unless you can process it. And you need APIs, which are the digital building blocks of the world, to be able to process it. So how can you do that in an effective way? Which brings us to the second point. You, as a business person, have a huge opportunity here, because hopefully we've at least given you the idea that APIs are not as complicated as they first appear and largely require your input from a business perspective and a common sense perspective to come up with a scenario which you can then go to IT with to make work. The second takeaway is, from a business point of view, APIs are genuinely simple. Of course, if you're coding them, they're not simple at all. But as business people, we're not. So rather than being afraid of them, we need to see them for what they are. Use analogies, because this helps us both conceptually think about things and to communicate our idea to other people. Because as we mentioned earlier, there's 2 steps to having a good API strategy. You start with a new business idea, which is a good one. Always start with a business idea, but then you've got to figure out what capabilities you need to support it, which APIs, maybe they're going to come from one vendor, maybe they're going to come from 2 or 3, and how you're going to communicate that to IT. So the other thing about APIs, I remember myself when I was first learning about them and getting exposed to them, and saying, okay, that's 1 API there, 2 APIs there. The point is, you can daisy chain APIs in virtually any combination. So the question is not, can technology solve my business idea? You can say, yes, I definitely know that it does. I promise you, you can do it. And the last takeaway is, and this is where reality kicks in. Obviously, we mentioned earlier about avoiding the innovation trap. Being aware of it is half of the battle. Don't chase the new and shiny for the sake of the new and shiny. You want it to support your business idea, the real opportunity. And yes, APIs are simple and connect 2 systems together. You get all that now. But ultimately, these opportunities are 2-handled. They have to be carried by the business and by IT. So there has to be a dialogue between the business and IT. So when we're saying earlier that yeah, APIs are viewed as being technical domain only, and that's not true. You as the business guys need to come up with a business idea from which you can build your strategy. That's all true, but the role of IT is equally as important. So it takes both. It takes 2 to tango. And that's pretty much all from me. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll go into the questions and answers. There's just one slide I'd like to put up for CBD to make sure that they get their points accredited today. So we show the slide at the beginning, we showed it at the end, and now you can collect your points. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Peter. We just had a few questions come in. which I'll try and kind of direct to particular members of the panel. The first one would be probably for Richard. So it's kind of two layered really. So can APIs add value for MGAs when working with insurers, and if so, how could that be, and how could that come across?
So yes, absolutely, 100%. I'm struck at the minute by how many conversations I'm in, both from the insurer side and the MGA side, whereby it's all about how can they build more proximity between themselves. So for example, how the insurer wants to be able to push out insights in terms of how the MGA is writing, what are some of the portfolio analytics that it can share to help benchmark the prices, to be able to put more information out to the point of writing. And equally, how MGAs want to be able to say, we want to share more what's going in our portfolio so that you can see what's going on. And APIs are the way in which the two are talking to each other. And I had a slide, didn't I, around how both types of organizations are beginning to find each other. And it's absolutely APIs at the key to that, because if you think about it, the way in which insurers have traditionally got information, it's through bordereau, it's through some kind of data upload, which is often got some time lag to it, so it's kind of restricted and it's later. And effectively what's happening is it's much more in real time or near real time with more data. And API is just the way in which people are talking to each other. So yes, absolutely.
Okay. And just off the back of that, there's one quick question that's come in very quickly now off the back of it. So you talk about bordereaux, but what insurance APIs are you seeing the most used in the market?
Well, for bordereaux?
In general. In
general. We're seeing a range of them actually. It's not so much that I'm going to go through the list of vendors, but there are all sorts of things out there, and to Pete's point, it is actually really straightforward. Interestingly, more straightforward than you think. Most of the challenges, often I've experienced it on the insurer side, in terms of insurers being able to receive those APIs, but more and more that's kind of that's changing now. One of the things I'm absolutely expecting in quite short order is what I call much more of a many-to-many or peer-to-peer trading going on. There's been a bit of debate in the market around the extent to which we'll go via hubs or exchanges or so on and so forth. They will have their role, absolutely. They continue to do so, but I think we're going to see a many-to-many trading relationships, including through brokers as well as to each other.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Richard. Possibly one for you, Peter. How does kind of the cost compare with traditional systems when you're talking about kind of the broad look of APIs across the market?
Okay, well, that's a good question. Obviously, it depends on the situation. But to put it in perspective, if you think about just a few years ago, when we were selling enterprise systems, you'd be looking at two major components: the license fee, which could be in millions, and then the running cost. So now, because it's a pay-as-you-go model, there tends to be no license fee, but you pay a fee for what you use. So that's the software license fee there is just a percentage of what you're using. It's usually linked to the GWP and or a combination of rating factors that are used with your products. To answer the question from a numeric point of view, looking back, I would say that the new fees are 30 to 40% of what the old license fees would be. So pretty much a 60% saving.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Peter. Just another one for you. Has API development increased rapidly over the last few years, and when has it really kind of taken off, if so?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, for us, it's been our main focus since the Alibaba experience in 2014. Now, of course, if you've got 10 million lines of code to re-engineer and make your capabilities completely granular across an end-to-end system that's doing quote bind, issue claim, channel config, product config, etc., that takes a few years to do. And you're always refining, refining, refining. So I would say it really started in 2016, 2017, and it was a relatively new idea then. But things were moving, funnily enough, in India, who are known to be early adopters of technology in business, are very good at that kind of thing. We started there, and we had quite an early take-up both from mainstream insurers like SBIG, which is the fourth largest insurer there, and also the up-and-coming insurtechs. So that's when we started to get a bit more traction, and that's when more and more APIs were developed. And then moving forward, there's more of an uptake from e-commerce companies, for example, Flipchart doing embedded insurance, car dealership platforms, aggregators. And then finally, I'm happy to say, over the past few years, we've seen much more APIs being introduced for mainstream insurers. So by that, I'm talking about high street insurers, MGAs, where this is highlighted by the fact we've just signed up a tier 1 in 4 countries in the Middle East that is purely API driven going forward across all lines of business, across all aspects of processing insurance. And for them, that means, I'm not promoting Willis Towers Watson here today, but I'm very grateful for them to do the talk with us. But for these people that have just bought our platform, I call it the plug board because it's easy to understand. Of course, our developers hate that, but it is a plug board. For those insurers that have just bought our API-enabled platform, they can just plug Willis Towers Watson into it at a later date, and it is literally as simple as that.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Again, probably one for yourself, Peter, unfortunately. You can keep talking. With multiple APIs pulling data in from different systems, is there too much dependency? If one fails, does it mean the quote system is useless, become non-operational, stroke unable to quote? Okay, so I'm going to dodge that question because I'm not a technical person. I'll give you a brief answer just in case somebody else on the panel wants to step in. I know we've got a few of the technical guys here. So we have to test our software before it goes out of the front door, right? So we can't have it falling over like that. And if you think of the case of a good example is Netflix.
I think one thing, just to give a sense of, sorry, Pete. I was going to say one thing just to give a sense of how much load some of these applications can take. So our Radar Live application deals with something like 2/3 of the UK's personal motor quotes each year. So we're not particularly kind of worried about load. So is that?
Yeah, and I'll add to that, Richard. From a technological perspective, I could probably answer that better because I am a developer. But, so the way systems are designed on the cloud, you'll hear the term high availability, right? And that's baked into the solution that we offer, right? If you run an API on Insurmo or any other cloud platform, you have the ability for it to dynamically scale, as Richard said, to many hundreds of thousands and millions of requests. If you're deploying a service on Insurmo, we provide the tools for you to be able to do that and set up your service that way. So there's this whole set of best practices that we suggest people follow when they're using APIs, so that you don't fall into those traditional pitfalls. And you'll find that in general, things running on cloud have a general better high availability reputation than traditional data centers, right? Because those traditional data centers have more pitfalls in terms of responding to these sort of spikes in demand.
Okay, thank you, Imran. Final question that we've got here, potentially one for Richard, although maybe Imran from a technical perspective. Accessing reference data sources can be very useful to MGAs. What reference data sources are you seeing available via APIs? Richard, do you want to try and feel that one first?
What I will say is that our whole software, as part of the rating, can pull in all sorts of different reference sources. and depending on the class of business, that can vary. I don't know whether Imran, you've got some of the examples that you guys use day in, day out, but it's quite a standard feature. And I guess this is also, just before I ask Imran the question, just to kind of really reinforce the use of APIs, is whilst the quote data might have been API'd into our engine, in order to complete the quote, we might be then doing call-outs via APIs to other external data sources that whoever's pricing it has already said that they need, and putting that in and then adding it to the price and then returning it, and all in the time that you saw it took when I did that part of the demo. So often these things can form chains of APIs to different systems, make them very powerful. Imran, is anything you want to add to that?
No, you absolutely hit the nail on the head. I mean, I think with APIs, the possibilities of using reference data are endless, right? In the demo that you saw, we were pulling data from Entrust, we were pulling data from Radar Live. We can pull credit card data, flood data, catastrophe data. Really, any data source that's available on the internet, you could probably access it over an API. Google address data, Google Maps data, all of these big sort of companies, Uber, Twitter, they all have APIs. So really, it depends on your idea, and the possibilities are endless. I think with APIs, it's a lot more easier to access data than it's ever been before.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Imran. Peter, that's all the questions, so I'll just pass back to you for wrapping up.
Okay, thank you very much. So, well, that's everything from us today. Thank you very much for joining the Bluffers Guide with Evotech, Willis Towers Watson and Entrust. Certainly hope that you're able to take away a few points of value, and if you have any questions, please feed them back, and remember to do the feedback questionnaire, because they help us a lot. Thank you again for your time, and see you on the next one.
Thank you, Peter, and I'll end the webinar there.